How you doing, everybody? Welcome to another episode. Sadly, Dak's no ways tonight. He's getting his hair transplant done, so he should be back in the next couple of weeks, probably wearing a hat and that. We're very privileged to be joined by the assistant manager of Motherwell, Keith Lasley. Keith, cheers for joining us tonight.
Happy to be here.
Appreciate it.
Didn't have to travel too far, which was good.
No, nice and local, but we're going to talk about that local connection. Before we go on to it, we'll just go through our sponsor for the night. It's Arch Fire and Security. It's own Archdeacon, the coach of Kilburnley, the new coach there. So Tommy and Sean and Owen get a good win at the weekend, so well done to the lads. So Arch Fire and Security, they specialise in fire alarms, security alarms and CCTV installation. With the change in law coming into effect in February 2022, all households must be interlinked smoke detectors in all rooms, so it's a good time to get in touch. You can get in touch with Owen at owenarchdeacon85@gmail.com, and if you quote PG and DAC, you get a 15% discount. You're going to have to quote PG and DAC because you need to get the house all linked up now. And he's local as well.
I used to play with his son, Mark.
No, that's right. He's a Greenock now.
Greenock, aye. Well, he was a young lad coming through.
Archie, aye. That's his brother. It's his brother on.
Oh, is it?
Aye.
All right, because his dad's on as well. Is that right?
Seniors at that game.
Right, okay.
That's how bad it is. That Owen's about 35 now.
Right, okay.
So not a young man anymore. Owen, keep that in mind. Right. So talking about that local connection, you played for the dark side. You played for Parkmoor.
I did, yes.
That's.
Well, I started there. I ended up at Erskine, but Parkmoor was the start.
How was it back then? Because obviously I've been involved with Erskine youth and stuff, and I ended up, when I finished playing at juniors and I dropped back to amateur team with Erskine. What was it like playing in the Erskine kind of clubs back then?
A big rivalry, actually, I remember, to be honest, between Parkmoor and Erskine. My two older brothers, I think, did the same thing as me. Started at Parkmoor and then eventually moved over to Erskine, which felt like a big transfer deadline day. That felt like a big transfer. But I remember playing in just the red ash pitches in Erskine, really. St Anne's School, Barsale School, Park Mains, Darragh. You go through all the pitches, but predominantly on the red ash. And that was it, really, 9, 10, well, I think maybe 8. I started 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and I think then once I started getting, I think maybe 13, I then moved over to Erskine.
Sort of light,
aye. And then had a great time there. We had a great side and right through to kind of 18s, really.
You've moved on to Glenaford after Erskine. Yeah. That's where you've been picked up. Is it Billy Davies? Did a bit of coaching there?
That was the only reason I left, to be honest. And I actually still remember that phone call. My Erskine manager, Charlie Ritchie, which is actually one of the kind of football career I've been on to have, is one of the hardest phone calls that I've ever had to make, because we had such a good team, all my mates all playing together, and we had a good team as well. We had a good side, and so actually having that phone call to tell him that I was leaving to go to Glenaford, which in terms of football terms it wasn't a great move, but the only reason I left was it was the opportunity of getting an opportunity, if you like, because I knew the setup there and Billy was involved in it, and it was really because of that the only reason really that I left. So it was a difficult one.
See, was there no pro youth back then? Obviously you had the youth setups and stuff. Was it still the boys club, or was that before pro youth came into effect?
I don't really know, is the honest answer. I don't think it's certainly not the academy structure there is now. It's nowhere near. What I felt at Erskine again was, and it's different to now, because my own boy has played for Erskine, started at Erskine, and he's actually in St Mirren Academy now, and I think there seems to be a lot more scouts out there. When we were playing for Erskine, Parkmoor and Erskine, didn't seem to really be many people out watching the games and looking for young boys for this area. I don't know why. It was always heard of boys from Glasgow and Paisley and getting picked up by the teams, and I don't think it was a lack of talent. As I say, we had some right good players in our team, but again, for whatever reason, I think that's changed now. I think there is more players down watching, certainly my son's level. He's only 9 now, but even I can remember 6, 7, 8 years old, and the St Mirren Scouts over there, or the Rangers Scouts over there, or so I think Morton, all the kind of teams local. So I think that's just the game's totally changed in that regard. So as I said, it never really happened for me, but at Erskine there wasn't that youth setup, as you say. And it was really just that connection with Billy Davies that was my way into professional football.
Did he ask you to go in to play with Glenaffer? Was there always, or did you think there was a possibility of moving on from Glenaffer?
No, it was a bit different really. Billy had a relationship with the manager there, so it was really, I was going there because I knew what happened was he trained the team once a week at Linwood Sports Centre. We trained with the old first generation Astro there, if you remember that. I think we've all had a few kind of burns on that Astro, but we trained there one night a week, and it was him that took it. And Billy was just coming to the end of his playing career at Motherwell, and I think he was using it as a bit of experience because he was going to go into coaching, and he was using our under-18s team, or the Glenaffer under-18s team, as a kind of bit of experience getting playing. And I heard that, but he wasn't actually the manager, he wasn't actually involved in the team as such. He was just taking it kind of on a one night a week basis. So really I kind of knew that, I got wind of that, and again it really went for there, you know, as I say. And even at that he then left, got the Motherwell job, and it was really afterwards he then got back in touch and said, look, you know, do you want to come up for a trial? And by that time, you know, without going too far in it, I had left school. I did my apprentice electrician. I was kind of third year into my apprenticeship, and it was really kind of deep into that before he actually phoned me and said, look, do you want to come up? So it was 19 before I ended up actually getting up to Motherwell. That's
quite late in the game now, isn't it, when you're getting a lot of boys coming through 16, 17. How did you find the transition into proper adult football? I know you're playing 18s as boys are getting older, but how did you find the transition into adults football, and particularly at Premier League level?
Huge, to be honest. I actually felt inadequate is the word I would use, because as I said, I'd left football. I was obviously doing my Sparky, and I loved it. Loved the working environment. I was decent at school. I certainly wasn't top of the class, but I wasn't bottom either, you know. But I just wanted to go and work and earn a few quid, and you know, go out at the weekend with my mates and play football at the weekend. You know, it was kind of all the things that I think we all want to do at that age. So when I actually got the chance to go and I took it, I walked in and I still felt as if I was that guy. It was on a site 2 weeks ago, you know, so I thought, and I didn't really think it would last forever, to be honest. I kind of thought, I'll come in here, I'll get a shot, but I was wanting in a dressing room with you know, John Spencer, Andy Gorham, Don Goodman, you know, guys that really played at the top level of football, and I'm thinking, this wee guy that's been on a building site last week, you know, walking in with my overalls from the west. So inadequate is the word I'd use, and it actually took me a long time to actually get to a level mentally, I think, that I felt right, I actually belong in this environment.
You're saying mentally there, I was full time with Clyde for a year when they were in the first division. I don't know, maybe about 15, 16 years ago. I wasn't good enough to make the step up and ended up going junior, but I found the full time training, because we only had 5 or 6 of the young players who went into the first team, so we basically trained with the first team, and I found that really mentally difficult. Like, I didn't have the confidence at the time, and I was always hard on myself. Is that the way you felt when you first went in?
Definitely, confidence was a huge issue for me, and I think people look at, I probably look at myself, at my Motherwell career, and you think, I played X amount of games, you know, did a lot of achievements and became a kind of established player at the club. But see, if I think back to that time, and it was absolutely the polar opposite. You know, I honestly felt as if I was, like, this time next year I'll be really raised. It was, and I'm not saying that to disparage myself. It was just a fact. You know, that is just where I was. That was where my mental headspace was. And a couple of times it was really close. A couple of times, even in my first maybe 2 years, it was just like 1 year contract I was signing. And I remember, you know, not finding out to like the last day of my contract almost. You know, it was a case of, and it was a bit of a toss up whether I was going to be right. Here's another year, or right, see you later. You know, so I think the first couple of years were really tough. And as I said, it was really time that just gradually, and then I got, you know, made my debut. Then I kind of made 3 or 4 other appearances, and it was just kind of small steps.
So the thing is, you're saying it's quite kind of tight and stuff. You made your debut against Rangers. You don't really get any bigger than that to make your debut, particularly in Scottish football. What was that like, being a young guy kind of that? Because obviously you've been better than you're maybe giving yourself credit for, where you're thinking you've come off the site and stuff. But you've obviously been a fair bit better than you're giving yourself credit for. What was it like playing against Rangers with, I'd imagine, the players that they had at their disposal at that time?
An experience, an education, I think is the way I'd describe it. I mean, that Rangers team was, I'd say, probably one of the best Rangers teams in the last 20, 30, 40 years. You know, you're, especially in the area of the pitch I was playing in midfield, you know, it's Van Bronckhorst, it's Barry Ferguson at his top, his game, it's George Alberts, it's Claudio Reyna, it's Two Guy, it's, you know, the list goes on and on and on, Ronald de Boer. So And I remember, again, things you remember that sticks out in my mind is a phone call for Billy to my mum and dad's house up in Park Lindon in Erskine, and I never forget that phone call. It's one of the phone calls I always remember, and because my dad picked up and I could tell it was an important phone call, just the way he was talking. And I was like, that's a different tone of voice. And that's who it was. It was Billy, and I don't think even I actually spoke to him. I think my dad just came off and said, look, he just says you're playing tomorrow, and I'm like, right, okay. And I knew the game, Ibrox, and I'm thinking, right, okay.
Is that completely left field?
I wanted to sleep the night, but that's not happening now. So, but anyway, in terms of the experience, unbelievable experience, draining experience. I remember after the game just being absolutely drained. I actually felt as if I'd done well in the game. We get beat 2-0, but in many ways that was an achievement back in that time. It wasn't a terrible result, funnily enough, but an absolute education playing against that level of player.
But talking about that, how was it? Because obviously Ferguson would have still been quite young, but he's arguably one of the greatest Scottish midfielders of this generation. You've got Van Bronckhorst, two guys who absolute zing on, unbelievable. What was your feelings playing against these guys? Did you feel like you handled it well enough, or do you feel like you're just chasing shadows?
A wee bit of both, to be honest with you. I think I handled it well. I actually thought I played quite well in the game. In saying that, I was still chasing shadows, but I didn't feel as if I get overly exposed. I think that was my fear. You walk into a stadium like that, 50,000 people, your debut, your family are there, and you think, right, I just don't want to get exposed here. I want to try and give a good account of myself, and I think I've done that. You know, even looking back now, I think I did. Listen, did we spend most of the game chasing them about the pitch? Aye, but better players than me did that season. So you know, again, the players you mentioned, like Sabada Ferguson, that just to be close to them, just to put a tackling in them, just to win the ball off them a couple of times was, again, I go back to that kind of confidence building for me. That's the things that you think, you know, that's like, I'm in the same pitch as these guys. I've just won the ball off him. I've just made a decent pass. You know, it's like, maybe I can play football. You know, at that level, and I think it does take things like that for you to really believe that, right, I can play.
What's it like being in a dressing room before a game at Parkhead or Ibrox? Obviously Billy Davies has went on, done well down south and stuff. What's he like, or what was he like before a big game like that? Is there anything different, or is it just try and treat it like a normal game and you just go and play?
I think that can vary from manager to manager. What Billy was very intense, very demanding. So I think I can't think crystal clear in terms of his actual team talk and things like that. But what I can remember overall about him, and I'm sure he'd have been exactly the same that day, is demanding. I mean, Billy, no matter the game, he felt as if he could win every game. You know, and I think he demanded it off you, which I don't think is a bad thing, because I think even at Motherwell sometimes we have suffered over the years of a wee bit inferiority complex. You know, I think, you know, a couple of managers will maybe go on to speak about them, but you know, I think the managers that have gave us belief that we can go and compete with the best and you know, go to places like Ibrox and just get rolled over and be happy with that. You know, it's I think, and Billy was one of those. You know, it's no surprise that he went on then down south and did what he did. I mean, technically a very good coach, but a demanding coach. You know, somebody that every single day was, you know, get every ounce out of you. And you know, I thought it was great. It was great for the group. Maybe too intense for his own good at times, and I think that's maybe he's had a few fallouts over the years. But in terms of an actual football coach, first class.
That's excellent. We'll come back onto that, because there's one manager in particular I'd like to talk to you about. We'll go back onto that down the line. You're a couple of years in, you're starting to get yourself into the first team a bit more, and then administration comes in April 2002. Did you take much notice of that, being so young? Because obviously, if that happened when you were captain, or as you're now as assistant manager, you'd be focusing a lot more on people who do different jobs about the stadium and what it might impact them and their families. But as a youngster, how did you react to that, or did you see it as an opportunity for me to play?
I did eventually see it as an opportunity, and it was an opportunity, to be honest. It was a massive opportunity, but at the time, no. I mean, at the time you knew it was serious. I think you knew the consequences. I know what you're saying, you were still a young player, and you're absolutely right. Me now, or as a captain, or now my role, I would have a much better understanding of what the whole thing meant. But even being a young player, you still knew there was something, you know, something pretty big, you know, and the consequences were going to be big. And yeah, so you knew it was a really difficult time for the club. As usual, the fans got together and were, you know, absolutely fantastic in terms of it's a well worth saving campaign. did what they could, did their bit. And then I remember getting taken into a room one by one. It was pretty much, you either had a job, you had to take a wage cut, or you didn't have a job. It was like 3 options. Your name get put on the wall, never forget it, the sheet on the wall. You got like a 10-minute time slot, and it was basically you go in with the administrators. As I say, it was like get your boots in the way, or as I said, you could stay. So, and I think that was for every member of staff, not just the players. I think there was every member of staff was called into a room one by one. So it was you just knew it was a terrible atmosphere. People coming and going that you'd worked with, that you'd seen, people that had been in the building at that point a lot longer than me. You see lose their job, so you still had an appreciation for what was going on. It's maybe only when you look back on it you see the full, even bigger picture of what exactly happened. But as you say, actually what ended up coming out of it was an opportunity, not just for me, but a lot of actually good young players that can play.
So obviously you've got like Stevie Hamill, Clarkson and stuff like that, who were all about that time with yourself. What was your conversation like when you went in? Because obviously the administrators, it's not like when you're talking about earlier about your on the day your contract finishing that the gaffer will bring you in and they'll say, look, this is what we think, this is what we're looking for or whatever, we're going to keep you. What was the conversation like getting in with administrators who ultimately don't really care about the football side of it? What was that like?
Short, I think, and to the point. I don't think there wasn't when I say a conversation, it wasn't a kind of two-way cut. It was like you went in and you listened, I think, for 2 minutes. And I think from memory, all it really was, I mean, some of the conversations might have been a bit longer than mine, because particularly the guys that were maybe had to negotiate their wages lower or told, that's you, you're away. But for myself, it was a case of, you're earning this amount of money, which wasn't a great deal of money at all. We're going to keep you on that contract, which I think was only, as I said at the time, was kind of 1 year contracts anyway. It wasn't as if I was on a big contract or anything like that. And that was it. I mean, that was pretty much it. You went in, you said, right, you've still got a job, you're going to stay on this money for this amount of time, see you later, next. So it was a bit of a conveyor belt. But as I say, for the guys that, and at that point John Boyle had obviously put a lot of money into the club, so there was guys on a lot of money. I'm sure the conversations were obviously a bit different to mine.
Obviously you spoke about there, just to digress a wee bit, you spoke about the fans groups putting a lot into the club, and if there's going to be any Motherwell fans listening in, do you think that's maybe part of the reason why the club have been so good with the fans this season, through COVID, where everybody knows that listens that I'm a Celtic fan, and me and my mates haven't been overly polite about Celtic with how things have been with season ticket increases and stuff, but the fact that Motherwell were so good with the fans, and basically if you had a season ticket last year you go to this year and that was it, is that something that you as a management team are really pleased that the club do?
Definitely, because I think at our club, I think what we try and do is take a longer term view. I think a lot of football clubs, through necessity, think, they just live hand to mouth and they think of just this moment. So we need money in right now, we need it in. Whatever, no matter what the fans feel like, right, we need to put our season tickets up by 30 quid a pop this week because we need this money in. And I think what our club are trying to do is take a step back and think of the longer term. This football club is hopefully going to be here in another 100 years' time. We need to bring that fan base with us along that journey. It's not about, can we make an extra 100 grand this year out of the fans, or treat them as customers. It's like they are the football club. I mean, our fans own their football club essentially now, and it's as you say, it's trying to give a bit back during a tough time, but I think it's trying to take a longer term view as well of the club as a whole and what it represents. Because for our club, and I'm sure a lot of clubs could make their own case, our club plays such a big part in the community as a whole, and I know that sounds dead cliche, but it literally does on a daily basis change people's lives or help people's lives, be that through the community programme, help with suicide prevention in the local area, providing school meals to bribe children in the area. So our football club actually does play an active part. It's such a big part of the feeling of the whole community, the community as a whole. So it's so, if we can free season tickets or stop season tickets for a year, for us the benefit over the longer term is far outweighs that. I
think it's quite a good thing to do, because ultimately it does benefit the club as well, but it's good that the fans are getting that back, and I suppose it does create that feeling. But that was just me, something I wanted to ask you about that. So through the administration period, the club's finished 11th, and then the season after finished bottom of the league, got fortunate with Falkirk not having the right criteria to get promoted. Was that a good opportunity again for younger players like yourself to get a bit of time to play when you're kind of the team's trying to build on the kind of setbacks they've had previously?
Yeah, definitely. As I said, that whole administration period, after it was opportunities, I said myself, Clarkson, Pearson, McFadden, Hamill, you know, all these guys, I would probably say we still have made it through, possibly, but I don't think it's a given. I don't think, even guys like McFadden, which sounds like ridiculous, but I do think the pathways were opened up, you know, quicker, and it gave us a lot more opportunities. And yeah, it was tough, you know, season. I mean, the Falkirk situation, when you think about it,
it's horrible, isn't it?
It's just horrible. It is horrible, you know. And at the time, obviously, we were the beneficiaries of that. So are we going to, as a group of players, certainly, are we going to argue with that? Absolutely not. But is it nonsense? Aye. You know, it's. But you know, it was what it was. That was the rules. We just went along with it. But yeah, I think that period it did, through that adversity, through the, just as I say, having the opportunity to play, because we just didn't have a big squad, we didn't have the money to bring in a big squad, it definitely, I think, gave a pathway, and pathway is something that's spoke about a lot in youth football these days. We certainly had the pathway to go into the first team and make an impact. I
suppose it's good that it was good for the Scottish game as well, with the likes of McFadden and Clarkson's end up getting capped, Pearson as well all get capped. It was good for the Scottish game and whole, for these young players to come through, which I think is something that can be lost on bigger clubs, where you look at Hamilton through the years, have had to play their youth players, so it's always benefited. You've had a couple of years, you started to get yourself a bit established in the first team, and then you went down south to Plymouth. How did that move come about?
It all happened pretty late, to be honest. I remember the 04 season, which was the season I left, and again I felt as if it was only really into that season that I started to really establish myself in terms of being a, you know, proper regular in team, if you like. And again, it probably goes back to my insecurities of joining Motherwell at first. It was actually, I never really had an intention of leaving the club as such, but once I heard that a club, even an English club, again, something to me that I never thought would really happen to me, to be honest with you. You know, I just, again, no, just kind of saying that, I put myself down, but just at that point I didn't think it was going to happen. And a couple of clubs up here, Aberdeen being one, I think there's a couple of clubs, Hibs maybe as well, and then the Plymouth option come up as well, and I don't think I would have left for another Scottish team, but the English option, and Plymouth had just been promoted into the newly formed championship. This was going to be the first championship as it was that year, 2004. And you know, I looked at the league, and it was, you know, it was West Ham, there was Sunderland, there was Leeds United, there was, you know, and I thought, I never had any kids at the time. Me and my wife, well, was girlfriend at the time, and I just saw it as an opportunity. I thought it was a kind of once in a lifetime thing, and I thought, is it something that you'll probably regret and think back and you know, maybe I'd taken that chance. But anyway, so all the things put together, I wasn't in a rush to leave Motherwell, but it was just the opportunity came, and you know, I decided to go for it basically.
You know what it's like, it's hard with the allure of going down to England. You're talking about some of the clubs, I mean, that's proper Premiership clubs as well that you're getting the opportunity to play against. Spoke about it earlier, about when you've stepped into full-time football, and maybe the way you had to go up in your fitness, and maybe insecurities in yourself that you've had to kind of try and get your confidence up. You know what the English view is very kind of, it's not the highest it is up here. And I remember seeing, when Hearts played Tottenham in the Europa League or UEFA Cup, might have been still then, and Harry Redknapp came out and said after it, he's like, I was very surprised at how poor the fitness levels were. Is that something you found, that the fitness levels were so much higher?
Aye, certainly at that time in 04, that was 2004. I wouldn't say it was so much fitness, it was the physicality. It was like the kind of athleticism is the word I would use. I mean, I'm obviously not the biggest guy in the world, but when I went down, I think my first game was against Millwall, I'm pretty sure, at home. We played Millwall, and I played, and it was the size, you know. So again, probably no fitness and being able to run. This again, engine's probably something I've been able to run, but when I was in the tunnel, it was like, it was one of the ones, you know. It was like proper, right, you know, Land of the Giant stuff. And I think over the whole, that's what I would say. I would say in terms of the football technical side there, it was a big uplift for certain teams. West Ham, people like Teddy Sheringham was playing for West Ham at that point, and you know, I could go on to name a few players. So individual players, and it's particularly the bigger clubs, technically, there was a jump. But on the whole, kind of middle to lower end of the league, I wouldn't say the technical aspect was bigger. I'd say just athleticism was a big thing, and I think Scotland's caught up in that. You know, advent of sports science, and I think the setups and staffing structures in Scotland now is a lot more professional. And the knowledge is caught up, so I don't think it's as much of a gap now. But back then, I think there was a big gap in the physicality.
Is that something that obviously you experienced it first hand back then? Is that something that you are quite heavy on now with your team, where it's you want the players to be very physical in terms of their size, and that obviously it makes you stronger and a better player? Is that something that you push forward quite a lot?
Yeah, I think yeah is the answer. I think all teams do, and I don't think it's not necessarily always about bulking up. Essentially, it's just even the ones that are in a smaller frame, it's just being as fit and strong within that frame that they can be, basically. I think it's a general thing that's happened, not just in football but across sport, as I say, sports science and nutrition and all the things. And I think the players themselves now are a lot better educated. You know, I think back then we'd turn up at a gym and, you know, maybe your physio would say, right, go and do 8 reps on the bench press and, you know, go and do 6 pull-ups, you know. Whereas now it's individual programmes, the players know themselves. You know, most of the exercises, most of them are on taking supplements, most of them are you know, just looking after themselves a lot better than certainly we were at that point. So I think the education side, the knowledge is a lot better now. And as I say, I think across the board, I don't think there will be as much of a gap from down south to up here anymore.
How did the rest of your time go? It was obviously Plymouth working at, they stayed in division for a few years actually, but how did you find your time there under Bobby Williamson? And you've obviously ended up moving on and loan with Blackpool. Did everything go the way you wanted it to go, or did it kind of...
No, not really, to be honest. I think at first it did. I mean, I went down, I played maybe the first 15-20 games, something like that. Everything in life was great league, as I say, great stadiums, different football, everything was fresh. And Plymouth, a big club, you know, not traditional in the traditional sense of a great history of winning anything, but if you know in Plymouth, you've been down that neck of the woods, it's very, geographically, it's quite isolated, so it's actually got a really big fan base. I mean, as I say, that first game against Millwall, I think we had 20,000 at that game, you know, so it shows you if they get it right and they're in the right division, there's an appetite there and there's a fan base there to work with. So all that side, it was great. Unfortunately for me, it just... a couple of changes of managers and things like that, which we know can happen in football. Slowly I just kind of fell out of the team. I was on the bench and then you're kind of in the squad, and then slowly it just kind of went away for me. So ultimately I ended up going on loan to Blackpool. Again, a good experience. Again, I was actually set to sign there. Simon Grayson was manager. It was his first job, but again, I don't know how close you followed that club, Blackpool, but they've had a lot of off-field problems over the years, a lot of off-field problems. And again, I'd verbally agreed a contract, but then that contract was taken away. But ultimately, all of that in a nutshell ended up with me coming back to the Motherwell in 2006. So would I change it? No, I wouldn't change it. At the time, would I change it? Yeah, I was frustrated. I didn't feel as if it went as well as I'd hoped. But as I said, kind of sliding doors moment, because I never signed at Blackpool. I ended up coming back to Motherwell. So obviously it's worked out well for you in the end. You've dropped down a division going to Blackpool. How did you find the standard in League One compared to the Championship with the bigger clubs in it? It was a step down, there's no doubt about that. I mean, there's still some big clubs in it. I remember playing at Bournemouth, funnily enough, although I think that's a totally different football club now. It was then, to be honest. But as League One, if you look at League One even today, you know, I think it's always got maybe 6, 8, 10 bigger clubs in it that have maybe dropped down. So there was some big games in it, but I definitely felt as if there was a bit of a drop in standard. But you know, I still did enjoy my time there. Moving
back, Maurice Malpass as a manager, how did that come about? Because obviously you've been down south for the best part of 2 years. Was either an agent involved, or was there just the club got in touch with you? Yeah, no, there was an agent involved. I was never ever signed with an agent, but I always took advice at certain times, and I did at that time. So I actually came up to train with Kilmarnock, so I trained with Jim Jeffries and Billy Brown with Kilmarnock over at the Science Parks, and they were great with me. They offered me to come up and say, look, they heard that my move had broken down to Blackpool, come up and train and see what your fitness is like, and then maybe a possibility of signing as well. And funnily enough, I actually picked up a wee niggly injury, so it took me a bit longer to get training with them than I'd hoped. But anyway, I trained for 2 or 3 weeks,
And eventually, at the time, and it was a bit strange, again, sliding doors moments, they offered me a contract, I think, I can't remember what day it was, whatever day it was, on the morning. And I think as I was driving back, I might have been staying with my mum and dad's in Erskine actually. Either as I get back on the way back or at my mum's, I got a phone call from Motherwell out of the blue. I think it was actually Stuart Robertson, who's now the Rangers chief executive. He was the Motherwell chief executive at the time. I'm sure the first phone call was for Stuart, and I was just, I mean, literally I was going to speak to my mum and dad and probably go and sign for Kilmarnock that day or the following day, and then I got a phone call that out of the blue from Motherwell that afternoon. And as soon as I heard their interest, and I spoke to Mo as well, manager, and that was it. Mine was made up. In terms of money, there was never going to be too much of a difference. But as soon as I knew Motherwell were interested again, I was like, and I had to phone Jim, and I was very apologetic. Again, difficult phone call to make, but he was, once he knew that Motherwell were in for me, I think he understood, and he was, a great guy. Jim Jeffries, so much time from, and great football guy. He was great with me, and that was me. Back to Mull. But it was again kind of bored. These moments you think back, you think, God, I could have signed for Kelly. It was sliding doors moment, as I say. But I was delighted to go back.
You've started off quite well that season, and then away to Inverness, you've got the ACL tear.
Yeah.
How was that? Because obviously you've not had an injury like that before. So how was that trying to get through that stage?
Well, it's not the best place to do it, that's for sure. Inverness away, because sitting in a bus for 4 hours with your leg up in the air is not great. So I remember that part about it, and it was my own fault. I always remember it was Ian Black, and me and Ian always had a few tussles over the years.
A few did we?
Aye, a few. And do you know what? I've actually went and tried to tackle myself, if you like, and I've ended up doing myself a wee bit. My leg stuck in the classic your studs catch.
That sounds like you've worded that well for you went to try and do them.
I didn't want to say that, but we did, as I say, we did have a few tussles over the years. But listen, actually, really good player. He always had a tough game against him, to be honest with you. One of my toughest opponents, to be honest. But so anyway, I ended up doing myself. So it wasn't a great first season, if you like. My first kind of big injury as well, as you say. And but we had a great physio at Motherwell, John Porteous, been there for years, and actually had recently rehabbed a couple of ACLs actually. So he was very well up to date in terms of the surgery and the rehab and all that. So he was first class with me, and I was actually talking to ACLs anyway. I was back relatively quick. I think it was about 5.5 months, 6 months, start to finish.
That's not an 8 or 9 months.
Aye. So I'm pretty sure from doing it to my first day back training was pretty much around about 6 months, which I was delighted with, and again after that I never had another problem with it, which it was big.
What was the likes of your recovery? Because obviously, even though it was only 15 years ago then, so it's not a million miles away, but things have evolved quite a fair bit since then. I've watched the David Turnbull video that was on YouTube and stuff, and obviously you were there when he's going through that. Not exactly the same injury, but was there a big difference for, because you've seen it firsthand, the stuff that he was going through to what you went through, or was it quite similar, the process?
I think it was quite similar. What I was lucky with, I never had a lot of damage around the cruciate. It was just basically my cruciate had gone, and I think if you speak to a lot of physios, I think what can be the problem is it's when the cartilage, you maybe have a cartilage tear. I don't
have cartilage in my right knee, so I know what you're talking about.
And I think that was David's problem as well. I think it was his cartilage was his problem, but in some ways that can actually be more troublesome depending on how the tear is, and without going too deep into it, because I don't know exactly, but I just remember at the time the physio saying that I was quite lucky that I didn't have a lot of other damage basically, so it was the rest of the knee was pretty clean. So I think that's unfortunately with David's situation where he had a little bit of damage, more damage than they initially thought basically. So but I mean, in terms of the rehab, it's a lot of repetition. It's a lot. Anybody that's been through that type injury will know that it's a lot of long days in a gym, repeating a lot of very small exercise, and repeat, and so it does take a long time. But that's when you need your teammates about you, some staff about you, and that's what we try to do with David. A boy that I've seen since 14, 15 year old coming through. What you're trying to do is just you know the talent that's there, and you just need to try and keep them mentally in a good place, and because you know their time will come. You know they're still young in their career, and they'll still get the chance to show their talent.
That was something I was going to ask you, because obviously you're talking about being in the gym, and you'll still get changed in the dressing room with the boys, but you're not out in the park with them. How big a part can that play for you? Because at that stage you're 26, 27, you're becoming a bit more a senior player. Were you still quite involved in all the stuff that was going on in the dressing room, or did you feel maybe even subconsciously a wee bit out of it?
No, I think you're still involved when you go in. What's the worst time is that time to go training. So you're all in the morning, you all have, whatever it is, a cup of tea or whatever, coffee, whatever. And there's always a bit of banter from maybe what's happened the day before, or there's always something going on, obviously. So it's that moment at maybe 10 o'clock where it's right, let's go, we're going to the training ground. And we don't, at Motherwell it's split, so the gym's at the Fir Park, and we train at Dale Park. So there is that split, the boys that go training, and the boys that go to the gym. So that's probably the moment you think, back up the gym, right, what have I got in the day, right, I've got to do 25 of these, 20 of these, and it's just kind of getting your mind shifted onto, if you want to get back out there, you need to do that, you need to do this bit. So I mean that's all it is. But it's when you get, as I say, you need good teammates and you need good staff around you. And as I say, on the whole, I think through probably the 25 managers that I've had and sets of coaching staff,
it's only 16.
I think predominantly most of them have been good, and say there's always been a bit of a support network there for them that is injured.
Moving on to a manager that I remember quite well when he came into Motherwell, he started to make a big difference. That's Mark McGee. I've heard you talk before about the Austrian pre-season camp. So how was that when he's first come in? Because you've been through enough managers to know how it is when a new one comes in. Was there anything different about him when he's come in? Or?
We thought he was mad. The pre-season he gave us, it was brutal. But that was, I think we finished 11th the year before. I think we just avoided relegation. 10th was it? So I think we just avoided relegation. I think we went to the last game or something though. I think we were pretty close. But I think this goes back to what I was talking about earlier, was we belly a wee bit in terms of demanding that we go and win any game, and all the managers I've had, Mark was the best at that, the best psychologically in terms of coming into a group of boys that could get relegated. It was kind of one of them the year before, and he came in. I remember one of his first team talks, and he's telling us we can finish third that season, and we're like, first, is this guy off his head here, but he just kept repeating it, we'll go to Hearts and beat them, we'll go to Aberdeen and beat them, and it was, he just kept chipping away at us mentally, I think. And at the time you think, this guy's mad, but it was like self-fulfilling prophecy. He just kept saying it. I think maybe to believe himself, convince himself as well as us. But what he had in that dressing room was a group of young, hungry people that just went with him. We went to Austria for that pre-season. We ran round a forest at 7 o'clock every morning. Then we did a double session after that, and it was like he asked us to jump. It was like, how high? It was that mentality we had, and I think it was because we'd done so poorly the year before. I think we were just like, right, we're going to just try. Well, this guy says, and he was telling us we were going to finish third, so we were like, let's go for it. Do
you think with him, obviously you never know what's really going through his head, but do you think with him being part of good sides like Aberdeen side and all that, and having played at a very good level, getting told by managers like that, I'm sure he was there when Ferguson was there, wasn't he?
Yeah.
So he would have been told by Ferguson. That was Ferguson's big thing, that we'll go to Glasgow and we'll beat the two of them. Absolutely. And that's how it is. Do you think he's probably just adopted that and thought, I'll take that in there?
I think so. I think certainly part of it anyway. I mean, Mark's is very much his own man. He's not Sir Alex Ferguson. I've been in a dressing room with him obviously, but he is a different type. He's not a hairdryer, that type. He's got to have his moments, but psychologically he's very similar to that. Psychologically, as I say, that was his big thing, was making a Motherwell team believe that we can finish above Hearts, Aberdeen, Hibs, Dundee United, all these teams, which we ultimately did. We finished third that year, qualified for Europe for the first time in years. So, but he had an ability to convince, and I think any good manager, or most of the good managers I've had, have that ability. Good communicators, and basically have the ability to convince you that maybe you're better than you actually are. And you can, and it's a skill, and Mark's got that in abundance.
it makes a big difference. You touched on Europe. That's something I was going to go into, and I'm just going to the now. You play Nancy, you lose 3-0 the other 2 legs, but playing a good French side, there's really absolutely no shame in that. How was it playing against a team of that quality?
Well, quality is a word, because that was the first noticeable thing. I think we went to the away game, and I mean, first of all, the whole experience was just unreal. You know, again, something that we never thought as young boys coming through at Motherwell, we didn't think, you know, get a chance to play in the UEFA Cup as it was at the time. And our families were there, and yeah, you know, just the whole experience of training at the stadium the night before, and it was like kids at Christmas stuff, you know, in the stadium, and it was brilliant. But in terms of just when the game started, it was just like, right, this is a different level. You know, again, relating to my own position, going to press people, and it was like you thought you were getting there and just flick around the corner, or you'd go too tight and it just fall over, fall on the ball. You know, the classic sort of European traits that you were just, and you're having a go at the ref, and then if anything, the ref gets more annoyed at you. You know, just that European mentality of they just play the game, that nous, that, you know, whatever you want to call it, streetwise. That was a big eye opener, you know, at a different level. And that Nancy team, I think 5 or 6 of them ended up, I think they'd finished third, or third or fourth in the French league the year before, maybe third, I think, actually. But I think they had a lot of players that went for 4, 5, 6 million in a group that following season. I think the big lad Fortuny, you know, went to Celtic, he played, and there was a few others. So a very good side, but that kind of level of European knowledge is something that we, certainly myself, you did have to build. It was just a different game you were playing.
You're the only person we've had on the podcast that has played European football. I mean, guys have played like tournaments in Holland and that, but not quite the same thing.
In Europe.
But see, you're talking about that team. I'd imagine that team probably would have been a similar level to Celtic and Rangers and stuff, because they're one of the top French sides. But having said that, some of the Celtic and Rangers teams you've played against would have went out and beaten a team like that. What's your views on, this is slightly away from Motherwell, what's your views on, like, you look at Aberdeen and St Johnstone and Hibs getting put out in the qualifying rounds? That's a team you wouldn't expect to beat, so that's fair enough. But why do you think our teams struggle so much against teams who are maybe teams you think should be beaten, when they're playing Celtic and Rangers and in one-off games can go and get results against the old firm? So why do you think we struggle so much when we're playing teams in Europe who aren't quite at Celtic and Rangers level, and in my opinion teams who probably aren't quite at Hibs and Hearts and Aberdeen's level as well?
It's a hard one. I think it's almost like, I don't think you can have a blanket view on it. You know, I think it is a very individual, depending on the team at that point. You know, I think for the likes of the Karabag side that played Aberdeen, apparently, I think their budget's crazy, ridiculous. You know, so Aberdeen getting out against them. Listen, across the board of Scottish teams have done better? I think probably, is the answer to that, you know, across the board. But I think each individual time that's happened, I think there probably has been 2 or 3 different reasons for that. I don't think there's just one reason across the board why that's happening. I mean, I can only speak from my own experience. We had a kind of both sides of the coin. I would say there's maybe, so I won't through list them all, but Panathinaikos, should they beat us? Probably. Levante, should they beat us? Yeah, probably.
Steaua Bucharest,
yeah, you know, so there's not actually that many for us. I don't think. I think there was one occasion, I think we played Odense of Denmark.
That's right, yeah.
And that's probably the one tie that we came out, and that was to get into the group stage. I think we'd won 2. I think that was the third qualifier that we'd played, so we'd actually won a couple. Been to Iceland and beat a good Icelandic team. Been to Norway, beat Elisund in Norway, and then we played Odense. And that's the one I think I come away and think, right, that's the regret. I think they went down to 10 men. We missed a penalty. Jamie Murphy missed a penalty in the home leg. Just missed opportunities, you know. And that's the one game you think we were as good as them. We should have went through. Whereas most of the other ones you think, I don't know if we actually deserve to go through. So it's a hard thing to say across the board. I think each individual you could make a case for should they went through.
I think for me I get quite frustrated. I'm very patriotic and I want Scottish teams to do well. Barring Rangers, I can't really say that. But like, I thought St Johnstone did really well with their games against Galatasaray. They gave a great account of themselves and stuff. And I do genuinely support the clubs for Scotland when they play in Europe, because it's good for everybody. I think it just gets frustrating that there's so many times that, like the Dens, why you're saying, that game, Panathinaikos, Bucharest, that's their whatever, you know what I mean. But too many times for me, we fought that final hurdle. But I'm saying that as a Celtic fan, the amount of times that we've been put out of teams that you think we shouldn't be, it is what it is. But you had a nice wee club record as well. You were part of the team that has the biggest European win ever, where you beat
Flamatari
8-1 after losing 1-0 away from home.
That's right.
That's
the hottest game of football I've played for record.
There was a boy that scored that game, Paul Slane. He's on another podcast, you've probably not heard of him. Offside goal or so, I don't know what they're called, right? But after losing the first game, obviously mitigating circumstances, I imagine with the temperature and stuff, you were taking a bit of stick coming back to Fir Park and then taking 8 off them. Did you feel a bit vindicated after that?
Well, it was funny. I go back just briefly. Go back to the home game for that. The away game for that Flamatari game, and we played. Memory serves me, it was like a 2 o'clock kick-off during the day. I don't know why we played so early, 2 or 3 o'clock kick-off, and it was 40 degrees. It was unbelievable. It took me back to playing it like the racecourse or something like that, or doing it Darroch on a bad day. Grass up to the knees, you know, it was like a proper old school pitch. Bullet holes in the walls and all that of the stadium.
Is that no normally like Motherwell?
After a Saturday night. But so that was I was talking about European experiences. That was certainly the one. But it was we missed a penalty. Big John Sutton missed a penalty, and it was one of the games where you were playing against a team and you knew you were much better than this team, but we just couldn't score. It was roasting. It was so actually coming back. We always felt confident. Did we think it was going to be that score? No, we didn't. But it was actually one of the games we thought we'll battle these when we get home. You know, it was one of the days. But did we expect that? No, we didn't expect that. And it's I think as you say, a club record. So.
It'll be nice because I don't imagine that will get beaten. If not for a long time.
No,
anyway.
Well, just to qualify for Europe again would be nice, to be honest. But listen, it's something we'll be doing in history, I suppose, which is like
back on domestic football, because I'm well at my depth of European football. Mark McGee's had a good few years. How was it when he's moved on?
It was a bit. Well, I say it was a bit of a shock. We knew. I don't know if you remember. He was actually linked very closely to the Celtic job, and I think he was. Certainly from what we heard, it was very close to getting it, to be honest with you, and you know things changed there. So by that point we kind of knew there was rumours there, and it was no surprise. I mean, we had, as I said, we just spoke about it, went from 11th to 3rd, and you know he was absolutely flying really. So it was no surprise it was other people interested. So it's still a shock when it actually happens, and it's because we'd done that well together. It was we were hoping he would obviously stay on, but again, it's football, it happens. But we just had to move on. As I say, it was nothing else we could do. It was just a case of trying to carry on that form that we'd shown, which was going to be a difficult thing. But so it was difficult. It was actually a difficult period after that.
See, when you're in the club, obviously, most of our viewers and that will not know what it's like being in at a club that size. And from my experience, I've only been at junior football. When you're doing well and a manager goes, it does come out of nowhere, because these things happen really quickly at that level. But there's obviously a lot of media stuff around it, and you're saying he was close to getting a Celtic job. I'd imagine a few of you had a good idea what was going to happen, and there'd be a bit of chat between yourselves and possibly with the coaching staff. Is that something that does happen at that level when these things are kind of in progress? It
does. I mean, sometimes even at the professional level, it does come out of the blue. But usually there is a wee whisper, what's happening. And actually with the Mark and the Celtic thing, it was a wee, from memory anyway, it was a wee bit prolonged. There was a wee bit of chat about it for a period of time or so. But it still doesn't prepare you mentally for when it does happen. Right, that's him, he's away. So that it was like that when he left, obviously, to go to Aberdeen. But we just had to keep going. That's what happens. Managers come and go, and we just tried to try and stick together and keep going. As I said, it had been a successful period. It really had turned the football club around in terms of mentally what we expected from ourselves as a group of players. So he'd raised our expectations. He'd certainly left a legacy in that regard. But it's always difficult to see a manager leave.
Jim Gannon's come in after that. It's not been the longest of spells, and then you've had Craig Brown's come in. What was it like having Craig Brown, who is a legend in our game, who managed the national team and everything, got us to World Cups and Euros and stuff? What was it like playing for a guy like that?
Brilliant. I loved Craig Brown. Again, back to wee moments in your career and things didn't work out for me under Jim Gannon, not just myself, but he seemed to have a bit of being his bonnet about most of the experienced boys that had been in the team, and kind of took most days out the team, to be honest. Myself, Stevie Craig and Stevie Hamill had a spell out, and if anything went wrong, it was really us that were the scapegoats for whatever reason. So, which, listen, it happens. Myself on this side of the game now, it was really how he went about it we had the problem with, rather than what he done, if you like. But anyway, that, and again, I was probably close. I was thinking of, leaving, because I wasn't playing, and not that I wanted to leave. But Craig and Archie came in, and again, it was just that respect, instant respect from the dressing room for these guys, what they'd achieved in football. And I think Craig and Archie knew when they came in, they had a good group of players. I think they just knew it was a dressing room that had been kind of split a wee bit. And if Craig Brown has got one strength, it's bringing people together, making people feel valued, and that's exactly what he's done. He's so good at it, and it's he just galvanised the dressing room.
What's he like as a manager? Because I can imagine the perception you get from him when he's on TV now. Obviously he's quite a bit older and stuff. He seems like a very quiet guy and softly spoken and stuff, and obviously been a teacher before, quite an intelligent guy. Was he like that in the dressing room, or did he have a bit of a side to him?
Well, that's why I had Archie with him, just to fling the teacups over his shoulder, just try a bit of target practice. But I think that was the big thing, the two of them together, because Craig is conscientious guy, as you say, softly spoken guy, very well mannered, very well educated. No, that Archie's no, and I would never say that to his face.
Don't worry, I'll never be watching this anyway.
But just a great team together. It's you knew exactly what you were getting for each of them. Archie did 95% of the training, was excellent, was straight down the line, was very demanding, and Craig just managed the whole thing. It's exactly what he was. I think he was a head teacher before. You could see him in that role, almost, making sure everybody's just pointing in the right direction, just overseeing the whole thing. And that's what Craig is great at. As I said, making everybody within it, just every small part in that dressing room and in that coaching staff just feel $1 million. And have Archie there when he just needs to kick a couple of arses, and that's exactly what he did.
It's funny, I suppose. It's people looking in would think, you have to be I'm not saying he wasn't, but a master tactician and all that. But if you've got great people skills, you can make guys do a lot of things that they wouldn't expect to be able to do themselves. Craig Brown's left, Stuart McCall's come in with Kenny Black. How was it playing under them? Because I remember Stuart McCall quite well for his Scotland days and his Rangers days and that, and he was a legend at Bradford and stuff. What was he like coming in?
Just that status again. Again, respect. I was actually still am an Everton fan. A lot of my dad's a Scouser, so that's the connection there. So seeing him come in as well, Evertonian, back when I was a boy, he was supporting the team, 80s. He was kind of part of that late 80s team. So on a personal level, I was looking forward to that. But
were you starstruck at all?
I was a wee bit. It was actually his first game was at Parkhead. I remember that, and I remember just coming into the dressing room for the first time. And again, see when your best managers, you think back, they've just got something about them. They just walk into a room and you just think, right, the manager's in the room. And Stuart's got that again. Not a very different. Thinking back to the likes of Billy Davis, he's not a really intense character. He's more a bubbly character and gets the place going. But what they, as I said, all these guys, Craig, Mark, they have a presence about them. Whatever that presence is, whatever that personality is, they've got it. They walk into a room and they bring that personality to that room. And Stuart was like that. He was absolutely brilliant. Him and Kenny together, and it coincided with probably me personally, my best football. My best 2 or 3 years without a shadow of doubt. My best football, and I think I would by that time. I'd probably be into my 30s then, I think. But if I look back at my career, that's my most, I think, just professionally, my best 2 or 3 years of football, no doubt.
I think you definitely had a good spell. Obviously, Rangers going out of the league, you became the second force for a couple of years. Then you've obviously the Scottish Cup final against Celtic. What's it like playing at Hampden in a Scottish Cup final?
Special. I've been asked this question a few times in terms of highs in your career and regrets in your career, and that's everything in the one. if I can encapsulate everything in the one game, because it's a high to get there. I actually remember the semi-final so well. It was like so clear. We played St John's, we beat them 4-1. Actually, I remember it so clear. I remember the score. Right, we beat them anyway, right? I can't
remember playing it.
I remember playing it, right? But what I remember about what I mean by it is just that feeling of knowing that you're going to play a Scottish Cup final, which is like just, it's a once in career for it was for me, certainly playing wise, and just to know you're going to be part of that day, part of that day that everybody watches. You get up on the telly, you just watch the Scottish Cup final, don't you? 99% of the time, regardless of who's playing in it. So to walk out of Hampden again, family's there. Just for us on the day, we just never turned up, is the honest thing. We just never, for whatever reason. As I say, we had a really good side that year. We played some really good football that year, and just on that day, we just didn't. And Celtic played well. Celtic deserved to win the game. And it was one of the things. So it regrets that we didn't play as well, but just absolute joy that you were actually part of a Scottish Cup final, because as a boy you just think again, you just don't think things like that going to happen.
I actually remember watching that game. I was playing with Maryhill at the time, and we had a Player of the Year do back at the social club in Maryhill. I don't remember the game because I was at steaming, but I remember that it was on. But Rangers are obviously out of the league. You have taken second place 2 years in a row. Is that a career highlight? Obviously you got Scottish Cup. Is that something you consider a high of your career, being the second best team in the country? Because for clubs like Motherwell and stuff, that is kind of number one almost, isn't it? If you can't, with Celtic and Rangers at full strength, you can't compete in terms of the resources and the players they can get. Is that a real high for you? Aye,
definitely. I mean, getting to play Champions League qualifier for Motherwell is just, again, you just think, chance, you're never going to get a chance to do that. And actually it coincided with, I became captain that year. So I became captain the year we went to play Panathinaikos. So I think it was my first game as captain, was walking out at Fir Park with leading the team out in a Champions League qualifier, and things like that. That's the thing. I think back to my playing career, it's like those moments, there's just the wee moments there, you're walking out the tunnel. In fact, I had my wee girl as a mascot, and they're the moments. That's your football career. I think back and I think, right, that's it. And the away leg at the Olympic Stadium in Athens, again, family had travelled out and things like that. So it's just these are the things you don't think you're going to get to do, if you're honest, at Motherwell. Certainly no Champions League anyway, but something that you just you cherish the memories.
You spoke earlier about your dad taking the phone call for your debut. Is that something that you've ever spoke about, with you being the captain and leading the Motherwell into the Champions League? Is now you've got children who they're not old enough to be doing anything like that in sport or life or anything, but is that something you and your dad have ever spoke about? Where, because I'm a parent now, my kids are very young, but I can only imagine my son leading out his club in a Champions League qualifier, being captain. Is that something you've ever spoke about?
Do you know what? No, really, no. And I think maybe we will one day. I'd quite like to do that, to be honest. But it's funny when you're in it. See, when you're in it and you were in it, I was in it for how long I was. You almost do take it for granted a wee bit. You do. I know you shouldn't, and but it's your job. It's what you do. It's not. It's special, but it's just what you do. Right. If you know what I mean. So it's like you just kind of go on with it. But as I say, my family, my wife's family, went to all the European trips. I think they went to, however many it was, 8-10 European away trips or whatever, and it became the norm for us, which is absolutely, you think it's mental for a Motherwell team, but it was, it was just what we did every year. We had a couple of trips in Europe. We eventually get put out, and then we get into the league. But so, as I say, it wasn't really something that you thought, right, I need to speak to my dad about that, because it was just what we'd done. And I think now, once I've retired, and I've been retired 4 or 5 years now, but I hope one day we will actually get a chance to just sit down, and things like my testimonial thing, don't get me wrong, there was a chance to maybe sit and have a wee chat now and again, but it's something I should do more of, to be perfectly honest, because it did not just myself, but for my family and all that, as you say. I've not really seen it for their eyes. I'm sure if it was me, I've got a wee boy and a girl now, for me going to watch them do something like that, I'd be like,
I'd mean everything. It's funny, like, people laugh at me even bringing this up. It's no comparable, but I remember, because I had to stop playing even though the level wasn't great. I had to stop playing at 28 because my knee was knackered. And one of my last games, I had a picture where I managed Bridgewater Amateurs at my first game.
Aye.
So I had to play in a friendly, and my wife brought my daughter. She was only about a year old at the time, and my best mate, who's her godfather, had to step in and help me out because we were short of players. And I've got a picture of me and him and her, and it's one of my favourite pictures.
It's brilliant.
I mean, it's a daft friendly to Paris Arts and Govan, but it means a lot to us, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
It's quite an important one, so it's something I thought I'd ask. But
no, definitely.
After McCall leaves, your way, Ian Barraclough comes in, team's struggling again. I'm conscious of time, but the big game, or the playoff game, what was that like getting into that? Because obviously Rangers were favourites, even though looking at both sides, they say you possibly a stronger team. What was it like having McCall and Kenny Black in the dugout for Rangers when they'd just so recently been...
It was hard, to be honest, and I remember even after the game and the whole build-up, it was hard because I'd built such a close relationship with Stuart and Kenny, to be honest with you. Most of the experienced ones had, you know, it was like, you know, probably as close as we'd got to any of our managers, to be perfectly honest. So I'm still keeping in touch with them now, and so it was actually really hard, to be honest, particularly after the matches, with the way they ended and stuff. But I think, as you mentioned there, our experience helped us massively in those ties. We were poor that season, really poor overall, to be honest. But what helped us in the particular ties was, you know, Steve McManus, Scott McDonald, Pearson, Hamill. At that point, probably during the season, it didn't help us. Maybe a few of us were starting to come at the end of our careers, and it didn't help us overall. But for the particular games, it did. And I think particularly the first game, going to Ibrox away, it was a tall order. You know, just mentally. But I think having that much experience, you know, you look around in the tunnel and you think, right, we've got a few boys who've been here, seen it, done it. I think helped us massively deal with that atmosphere and deal with the occasion.
You talk about the players straight through the spine of the team. Like you're saying, McManus, yourself, Pearson, McDonald, even guys like Big John Sutton, Lee Irwins went through probably the best part of his career, even though he was so young at the time. You look at guys like that, that's where the experience comes in. Like I say, it's probably hindered you during the season. The reverse fixture at Fir Park, obviously he's ended up winning by a couple of goals. I actually watched the highlights today in preparation for this. Rangers gave you a bit of doing at times, didn't they?
Absolutely. And if you watch the first leg back, before we score, Rangers are actually the better team. You know, Rangers are actually a better team, places bouncing. And actually what changed that whole tie was us scoring the first goal at Ibrox. I'm convinced. I think if Rangers score the first goal there, I think we're in a bit of bother, to be honest. But I think us scoring first in that game, and then we obviously go and get another one. But I just think the first goal at Ibrox was massive for the whole 2 games. But as you say, even in that second game and that build up, I think it was only 3 days between the games. That's like one of the worst 3 days I think I've had professionally. It was horrible. Just the build up to it, you couldn't wait till it was over. And you know, everybody thought the tie was over, but we knew it wasn't. And honestly, that second game, it was. I mean, I remember looking at the scoreboard like every 5 minutes. You know, you're just wishing that time away. And you know yourself, you go into any football game like that, you're not going to play well. You know, all we were doing was clearing, hooking the ball clear. You know, feel like I'm talking from 10 minutes in. You know, and that's not a good.
Playing with a kind of fear that you don't really want when you're playing.
Exactly, it's not a good headspace to be, and we were just so scared of chucking it away. Basically, you know, I think if we were all we're all saying the right things in the dressing room. We've all been there. Right, let's go. Stay in the front foot. Don't take a step back. Straight out. Whistle goes.
That's all right until people stop talking and you're back in your own head.
Exactly. Let's take 10 steps back and just hope for the best. But there was a wee bit of that, and then again we scored a goal and everything. Then you know,
I think it's the game of the 2 punches. Cammy Bell's worst punch ever, trying to clear that first goal, and then Mojny's one. It's funny. Lee Irwin's really good mates with a mate of mine, and we worked together at the time. And I remember tell Lee he needs to have a word with himself getting down after that punch. But that was obviously a big one to be involved in. Stevie Robinson comes in afterwards. You're kind of at the tail end of your career and stuff. How did you feel about coming away? Because again, I've heard on something else that you had the chance, if you played a certain amount of games, that you could extend your contract by a year, and you've decided not to do that. What was your thinking behind that? I think just this, being 5 years down the line and still being involved in the game, still being involved in Motherwell, which has been great, and which is hard when you're in football because it's such a never. You know,
you worked hard to get into it. You didn't think you were going to get the chance. You weren't going to give it up easy, if you like, you know. And but having said that, I just felt as if the time was right, you know. I just felt as if I didn't want to become that player. A balance between staying on, and financially it was going to be better for me to stay on as a player and just still to be a player. It's like you want to still felt fit enough, but were you going to become that player was just basically on the bench, maybe come off the bench for, you know, here, there and everywhere, and maybe just slowly dwindle out the game and miss that big opportunity to become the assistant manager, which, you know, in Scottish football doesn't come around a lot. You know, there's only so many coaching jobs at the top level of football in Scotland, and after I weighed all that up, I just thought, and coaching's always been a passion of mine as well. You know, I done my first coaching badge at 26, you know, finished my pro licence before I stopped playing, which was a big ambition of mine. And you know, I managed to get that finished, I think when I was 33 or something, 34. So I felt ready, and I just felt as if it was too big an opportunity to turn down. And I think, luckily enough, it's been the right the right decision.
Was there ever a conversation of potentially, like, you look at Scott Brown at Aberdeen, being a player coach, or was it just
no?
Steve Robinson's like, no, I want you in as a coach, or I want you in as a player?
Pretty much, and that's what he said, and that's what I said. He said that to me. So, but I felt that as well, and I don't know Scott's situation. I don't know how much coaching he's doing, but I'd be amazed if he's doing a lot of coaching, because I don't think you can commit to both. To be honest with you, I think, I mean, I know there's been a few player managers over the years. How you can commit fully to both of these things, I think, is just, I don't think you can do it. Not in the way I want to commit to doing what I'm doing. You know, I want to fully commit to trying to make these players as good as they can possibly be. I honestly don't think you can do that and be a player.
I agree.
I just don't.
Again, at a much lower level, when I was managing, I ended up having to play for a bit, and you leave yourself open to so much stuff. And I also think that maybe it sounds a bit egotistical, you lose some of your power because you're having a bad game and you want to chin somebody and be like, oh, well, you've been poor today. And you're like, it kind of detracts away for that status for you. How have you found moving into coaching, coming straight from being a player, obviously? Did you take anything? This is something I always ask guys that we have on. Is there anything to you when you've went in as a coach and you've realised, I did this wrong as a player, in terms of maybe even how you just behaved or how you carried yourself? Again, I apologise for reverting back to myself, because it's something that I kind of know about. I realised that my attitude was stinking as a player. When I went into management, I thought I would never had a player who had my attitude playing for me. Not saying that was you, but did you ever have anything that you thought, I could have done this differently or better when I played?
I think just an understanding of the game first and foremost. I think as a player it's a bit like that. You know, you play like that, you do your own bit, your own job, which by the way is not, it's not, you know, sometimes you just want somebody to do a job. But what I mean by that is just an appreciation of the team, right? Where's the defensive line, right? Are we getting any width? And if, you know, all the wee, you know, the tactical things at the side of the game. Then added in, obviously, you know, how you look after yourself. Could you have done that probably better? There's that odd time where I probably shouldn't have been out that night, and probably, you know, should have looked after myself a bit more there. You know, so I think there's always wee things you look back in your own career. But you know, I think the managers we spoke about there, and what I've tried to do is take little bits for all those characteristics. As I said, I think all the managers are different, but one thing they had is they were them, you know, and they shared a lot of attributes, and I think that's what you've got to be as a coach. You've got to pick these little bits and pieces, but essentially what you've got to be is you. And I think I'm learning that all the time. What is me? Learning what am I going to be my strengths? And I'm in a good situation at Motherwell where I feel as if I've got a good grasp of the game and I can contribute, but I'm still learning myself. I'm still in a good place where I can learn. Still learning off, you know, obviously Stephen Robinson's moved on now. I learned a lot from him. Graham Alexander, the new staff's in now, so you're learning, you know, new thinking of the game there as well. So I still feel as if I'm kind of on my way somewhere. You know, hopefully that's going to be management at some point, but you know, I'm quite happy in the place I'm in at the moment in terms of you know, learning all the time, every day, and you know, let's see what happens after that.
Your coaching career started off pretty well. You've had the 2 cup finals, 17-18 season against Celtic. You've lost both of them. Obviously, having been there as a player, did you notice a massive difference in being as a coach? Like something we got a lot of guys on here that are managers talking about it, even at junior level and stuff. They talk about the highs being so high and the lows being so low. Like when you're a player, you can impact it and you can get by it. It still hurts a lot. But as a coach, do you feel the highs are higher and the lows are lower?
Yeah, I think so. But I think it is. It's undoubtedly it is, to be honest with you, because I think you feel a responsibility for the whole thing, don't you? There's just no doubt about that. But I think it's more when you win, there's like a satisfaction there. There's like a maybe something you've worked on, you know, or particularly to an opponent, or just particularly to your own game plan or whatever it may be. And just when something like that happens, particularly on a big occasion, you know, like for instance, the two semi-finals, one against Rangers, one against Aberdeen, two big games for us, you know. And in particular, the things that we'd worked on that week, pretty much worked in those games. So like that's the satisfaction you get as a coach, and feeling as if you've had a bit of responsibility for making that or helping make that happen. Obviously the players are the ones that go out and deliver that, and are the main players as always, but I think that's where the satisfaction comes. But as you say, and the flip side to that is then the two finals, and particularly the League Cup final, not so much the Scottish Cup final, but the League Cup final we felt as if we were very much in, and we actually played pretty well in the game. And then the ones you don't win the game, you come away and you think that's the low. You put so much in it, so much into the prep, so much into the analysis, so much into the just the day itself, make sure everything's absolutely spot on for the players to perform at their absolute best. And it just doesn't quite happen. And that's they're the moments you just sit in a room after the game, have a beer, and the rest of the staff, and you think, right, and there's nothing else you can do. You just need to. I think we played, for instance, after one of the finals, I think it was the League Cup, we played Celtic again 3 days later. So it's like, as a coach, you have the downs, but it's like you've no time to.
You just need to get everybody back up.
On to the next one, on to the next one, and again, that's a big part of your responsibility. Is not just to get yourself up, but get that room, get that dressing room back up in kind of 2 or 3 days time, which is a skill in itself.
I suppose in that sense it's difficult, but you've got that ahead of you. You think, well, we have to just keep moving on, we have to get on with it. Stephen Robinson's left, you've become interim manager. How did you find taking the club yourself?
Difficult, to be honest. It was a difficult period. Again, we knew it was a pressurised period, if you like. I felt as if the manager, not that I knew he was going to go, but you sense it. You sense the results aren't going great, but still, again, when it happens, we announced, he was going to be moving on. It was still, you're like, right. It's a hard one to take for everybody in the club, because he'd done so well for the club. I think when he came in to when he left, the club had moved on in so many ways, with so many highs along the way in terms of the cup finals and other games along the way. But when that day comes, it's like, right, and again, like I've just said there, it's like a low, but it's like, right, we need to go again. It's a football club, it's football moves on. You've just got to go and deal with that situation. And for that few days that I was in charge, it's just, that's what it is. You're trying to galvanise a dressing room in a very short period of time. Some who had, what's like in a dressing room, they've all different. Some would have been quite happy for the manager to go, some are be gutted, some are somewhere in between. So it's like you're trying to gauge all of that in a very short period of time, and you're trying to kind of pick up the pieces, if you like, in a short period of time. So difficult. It's you realise pretty quickly what management takes. It's a big responsibility. But it's a responsibility that I was happy to take on, and as I say, it was obviously a very short one, but it was certainly for Motherwell, I would if they asked me to take out the bins, I'd take out the bins. So if I was happy to take on that responsibility for however long it was going to be.
Was there ever a conversation about you possibly getting the job?
Well, to be honest, my conversations were take over the run of the club until that appointment's made, and as I say, I was more than happy to do that. So that's what it was. I've got a great relationship with the chairman and the directors and the chief executive, and that's what it really was. And as I said, it was a difficult task, to be perfectly honest. As I say, it was quite a short time frame, but it's it's something that I was happy to do. And as I said, happy to help out the club in any way, shape or form that they need. And as I say, just did that to my best of my ability in that short period of time. But it was a difficult period, and I knew it was going to be a difficult period for those next couple of weeks.
It was good you being the manager and not having a manager for us.
Aye, well, that's
you've had every
exactly.
manager that Motherwell's ever had.
Exactly.
Graham Alexander comes in. For me, it struck me slightly of the. I wondered about the situation where he's come in and he's not brought his own backroom staff. Ended up yourself and Maurice Ross have stayed there. Was there any doubt that was going to be the case, or was there a couple of conversations that you had to have with him to kind of feel each other out and see if that's what was going to happen?
Aye, you do need to have conversations, and you're never sure, to be honest. There's another couple of staff in now that Graham's brought in, but at the time, no, you're never sure, to be honest. You're never sure, and that can work both ways. For instance, even Stephen Robinson moving on, you don't know whether there's going to be something there in the future in terms of moving on as well and things like that. But for me, it was about, I'm at Motherwell, I'm committed to still being here, and it's just a case, as you say, finding out what his thoughts are and taking what direction he wants to take the club in terms of what that staffing is going to look like. And you just do your job, that's what I felt, as if I want to show I can add value. I want to show that that I can still do a job for the football club, and that's what I did. And as you say, you just have conversations as the time goes on. I think, like anything, you need to build a relationship. I didn't know Graham, personally before he came in, and that's something you need to grow, something you need to build, and I think we've done that, or are doing that. And just your idea of the game as well. Professionally, you've got to see where each, because every aspect of the game, you've got to chat that through and see where each other is. Obviously, it's his way, and it's just understanding that and moving forward in the same direction. But I think that's what we're doing, and we've had a half decent start to the season, and just hopefully keep it going.
Well, you have losing the first game this season. But since then, you're unbeaten, drawn 1 and 1 and 2. So you've started to put together a good wee run. You're what is it, third or fourth in the league there now?
Fourth, I think. Aye.
So it's been quite a good start, and I think, just for personal thing, I think a lot of teams will drop points this season. I don't think it'll be like Rangers running away with it last year. I think Celtic are kind of, even though they're looking good when they're good, they're in a bit of transition period. So I think that yourselves, Aberdeen, Hibs and that, it'll be a lot closer than maybe have been in the last couple of years. What's your aim for this season?
Without sounding negative, our aim is always first and foremost to be in the division, and it sounds negative, so Motherwell fans will not thank me for saying it. I don't think they ever do, but that is when you see likes of Hearts, Dundee United, Hibs, Kilmarnock now have been relegated in recent times. It can happen, so that's it's not a target as such, but it's certainly the bare minimum requirement. Exactly. Above that, we just want to be as positive as we have. We've not put a place on it or anything like that, but we've got off to a decent start, and what we want to be is competitive in every single game. Again, I go right back to that Billy Davies, Mark McGee mentality. You need
to bring in the Mark McGee. I think you should be telling him third. We're getting third this season.
But listen, maybe we are telling him that secretly. I'm not telling you, but no. Listen, it's not really that. But what it is. Well, obviously transfer window shuts today. Might be another couple of bodies in through the door. Once that squad then settles down, you see what you've got in the building, then you can start to really formulate what your best 11 is going to be. Then as the season, you'll hopefully that start. You keep that start going, and then it's really once you start getting really into the guts of the season, that's when I think you can start really setting specific targets. But we want to be competitive. I think we will be competitive in every game, and really see where that takes us. But a positive mentality. I think top 6 is obviously that target, if you like. I think everybody outside the old firm really have got that set in their sights, and we're no different. We want to be in that mix at least to try and achieve that. So. Let's see where we go. It's always a difficult, taking nothing for granted. I agree with you. I think it's going to be. I think everybody will be taking points off each other. Very competitive. I think this year the league's probably as strong as it's been.
Definitely.
For a number of years, we're just delighted we're part of it and want to be a part of it in that fight.
Well, thank you very much for being your time. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you tonight. So thanks for that, Keith.
No worries. Cheers. Cheers.